I'd like to call the Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 Papillion City Council meeting to order. For the benefit of the council members, we're going to do roll call verbally because we do have two council members on Zoom, so I think that'll be easiest for the clerk. Ms. Brown, would you please take the roll?
Sunday. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines.
Here.
Glover. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Stube. Here. Engberg.
Here.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
We do.
And a current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers and also online at www.papillion.org. Got a real special presentation tonight. We've got an oath of office on a promotion. I'd like to invite Chief Lyons up. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Lieutenant Higgins, will you join me at the podium? This evening, Officer Ray Higgins is being promoted to the rank of lieutenant due to the recent retirement of Lieutenant Steve Young. Higgins began his career with the Papillion Police Department on November 15th, 1988. He possesses an Applied Associates of Science degree in electronics engineering from Southeast Community College. During his 32-plus year career with the Papillion Police Department, he's served with distinction in numerous roles, such as acting supervisor, field training officer, accident investigator, and fire investigator. He manages and trains personnel on the following programs: mobile data terminals, mobile video and recording, audio recording, and body-worn camera software solution, Trax, which is a mobile ticketing solution, and the new law enforcement records management system that we're working on, and others. He's consistently demonstrated throughout his career a high level of commitment and dedication to this community and its police department. He's also served as incident commander despite no formal rank for many special events, including but not limited to the Papillion Days Parade, mayor's races, and high school events and other community events. All of these experiences, in my opinion, underscore the level of confidence that others and I have placed on him despite no formal rank, and today we'll change that. Lieutenant Higgins, would you like to introduce your family?
He is my biggest supporter and behind me 99% of the time is my wife Gail, our daughter Jessica, and our grandson Vincent, the little guy in the middle there, our son Daniel and his friend Carlos, my parents Rich and Bev Higgins, my sister and her husband Terry and Jamie Hassick. My other sister in the red is Judy Dort. Time out. And my best friend of over 40 years is Brett Smith, who's also chief of police in Valley. Another best friend of the family, Fritz Weiss.
Gail, would you like to pin on the badge? If you want to step right up here so Chris can get a photo.
Ready for the oath?
Yep.
People that are watching, it's the longest one, I think. It's longer than the president's. So, and if you hear it out of context, it sounds like you're swearing to some things you don't want to. So you've seen it ahead of time. I state your name,
I, Raymond Higgins,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I bear true faith
that I bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
and without mental reservation
without mental reservation
or for purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of police lieutenant
that I will perform the duties of police lieutenant
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability.
And I do further swear
And I do further swear
that I do not advocate,
that I do not advocate,
nor am I a member of,
nor am I a member of,
any political party or organization
any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow
that advocates the overthrow
of the government of the United States
of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence,
by force or violence,
and that during such time
and that during such time
as I am in this position,
that I'm in this position,
I will not advocate
I will not advocate
nor become a member of
nor become a member of
any political party or organization
any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow
that advocates the overthrow
of the government of the United States
of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence.
by force or violence.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
This thing on? Yep. For those of you who may not know, as Chief said, I've been here since November of 1988. Councilman Ingberg, unfortunately, is on Zoom this evening, is a gentleman who hired me. So if I've mistreated you, he's the one to blame. No, I've enjoyed the 32 years here. Looking forward to it. I can't say I'll be here another 32 years. It's been a wonderful time here. I enjoy working here. Looking forward to the new challenge. Like I said, I've got an awesome support system by my family. Also an awesome support system with the guys standing back here in the back of the room or outside the room. I wouldn't be here without any of them. I rely on them and they support me, and I appreciate the confidence the chief has shown in me, and Ms. Powers and Deputy Chief Whitted. Looking forward to accept the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Myers, that was a year ago. Ms. Powers, administrators report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Black. The City Hall renovation project will begin next week. It is expected to last 6 to 9 months. The last of the office moves will be happening this week, and it's pretty quiet here if you haven't noticed with the moves that have already occurred. Since last week, citizens have been able to access the building and the finance departments by going to the former recreation department building located at the corner of 2nd and Adams Street in downtown Papillion. Jeff is putting together a surface transportation block grant application through MAPPA for the improvements to Portal Road, 6th Street, Cornhusker. And these are based on FHU's 2018 study that looked at widening the roads and adding turning lanes. It is a highly competitive grant, and if awarded, the project would be spread out over several years and several project phases. The NRD is soliciting public feedback on its 2021 hazardous mitigation plan until February 5th. And I emailed you the link if you're interested in providing feedback to that. And finally, the 2020 annual reports have been mailed out. Thank you to Trent for putting it together again this year. And the reports can be found online if someone wants an electronic copy or if they didn't receive a hard copy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda, 2 items. If there's no objections by council, I would like to move item E1 to the end of the agenda. I think that'll free up the room for the people that want to participate that they can be up here. So if there's no objection to that, we'll do that. And then, Mr. Sunday, did you have an item to pull? C5 is pulled. Anybody else? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Stubbe, second by Councilman Glover. Any proponents or opponents? Don't see any online. Please vote.
Sunday. Yes. Mumgarde. Yes. Gaines.
Yes.
Glover. Yes. Jaworski. Yes. Klug. Stube. Ingberg.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. So next is item C5, Resolution 210005, a resolution to approve the reappointment of Mayor David Black, Chief of Police Scott Lyons, Fire Chief Bill Bowes, and Dr. Jeffrey Strohmeyer, and the appointment of City Council President Tom Mumgard to the Board of Health for a one-year term from January 2021 to January 2022. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Councilman Glover, second by Councilman Jaworski. Mr. Sunday.
Thank you. First, I have some questions about the statute, the enabling statute. It's found at 16-238. Alan, if you,
Going to direct those to the city attorney then.
yes,
probably.
sir. And I hate to put you on the spot. Alan, I'll give you time to find that statute. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it appears to me that perhaps we should be appointing a mayor, a physician, a chief of police, and 2 other members. If we are a city, are we a city of the first class?
We are city of the first class.
So I'm wondering whether we shouldn't be following that model proposed in statute.
Just to clarify, I think it's an interaction of states. We'll have him clarify. I think this interaction of state statute and city ordinance. And you're right, the ones by state are the mayor, chief of police, city physician are the required ones. And then there's 2 additional. And I believe our city code defines one of those additional as the city council president.
It does.
Which
It
then
does.
leaves the one additional, which is the fire chief in this case.
The question I'm raising is why are we as a city following the all other cities model that the statute provides for, as opposed to the city of the first class model that the statute provides for?
That'll refer to Mr.
That's my
Thielen.
question.
That'll refer to Mr. Thielen.
You mentioned statute number. What was that statute number?
16-238 of the Nebraska Code.
No, and I'll do one thing as he's looking, just in case it takes a little bit more time to research. I don't know if it's time sensitive. I'm thinking, talk on one council meeting. So I think I'll throw it out to Mr. Thielen. If for any reason it takes more time to research the
Well,
question, we could
I don't think
carry
it
over one.
changes. It doesn't really change.
Okay,
And I'm okay going forward tonight. I get it. I guess what I'm getting at is maybe we should be
clarification.
changing our ordinance to match up with state statute.
Yep.
But I would like to make a point as to these proposed appointments. Clearly, we have to appoint the mayor and a physician and the chief of police. We have the option to appoint 2 other members. I'm not sure it's wise to be appointing, and I have nothing against Bill Bowes. He's a fine gentleman, and this is not an attack on you, Bill, but it doesn't make sense to me to have yet another person who reports to the mayor being on this board. It just seems to me to be further ensuring that it's just a rubber stamp for whatever the mayor wants, and providing this mayor and any future mayor political cover under the facade of a board. So I would ask that the mayor would consider appointing this 5th spot to someone here in the community that would voice the interests of liberty and freedom in our community, so that there can be different ideas bouncing around at this level. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Thielen. If there's.
Well, the sentence in the statute that we go under is in all other cities, a board of health shall be created consisting of 5 members, the mayor, a physician, the chief of police, the president of the city council, and 1 other member. So I guess I'm not seeing how our ordinance is different from that.
Well, all other members other than cities of the first class, which we are, I believe. That's why I'm asking the question.
I think that in all other cities, well, chapter 16 applies to all first-class cities. And the first part of this section talks about first-class cities that have a commission plan of government or a city manager plan of government. We aren't either of those. So we come down to in all other cities. That's what we are.
Okay, so we are consistent. You're saying we're consistent with what the statute says.
Yes.
I can
think so.
accept that. My point, I'll reiterate it, is that I think there should be one at-large member of the community that would voice the interests of liberty and freedom in our community so that everybody can make those considerations at this Board of Health level as well. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. I don't think we need yet another person who reports to the mayor on that 5-member board. So I'm going to oppose this slate of candidates tonight.
And one other thing, just to clarify on there, and then you're correct. The final say is the council, so it's an appropriate thing you're doing. But just a little bit for education to the public. One of the reasons I selected the fire chief as that appointment is we are talking the Board of Health with these community health. And when I think of community health, I think who's the one that really thinks from a public safety perspective has that ultimate responsibility. It's going to be the person in charge of EMS. So that was the logic. Whether somebody agrees with it or not, that was the logic.
And
so I'll let the appointment stand.
Again,
but,
I'm not in any way disparaging Mr.
Yeah.
Bose, and I don't mean to do that.
But to your point, if there is a desire to have another perspective on there, I'm not opposed to a discussion. If the ordinance allows it, is it appropriate to add another person, which is another appointment? Or so that's one option. And then the other one is just to deny the appointment. But
The statute does only allow for 5 members, as I read it.
it's not permissive. Okay.
It says it shall be consisting of 5 members, I believe.
But that would take an ordinance change if we want to do that. Okay, appreciate that. But that's the logic of why the fire chief. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Sunday,
No.
Mumgarde,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Glover, Jaworski,
Yes.
Klug, Stube, Ingberg,
Yes.
7 yeas, 1 nay by Sunday.
Motion passes. Item D1, ordinance 1914, an ordinance to approve the vacation of the unimproved part of First Street right-of-way lying in the south half of the northeast quarter and in the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 26, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska, with title thereto retained by the city of Papillion. Is there a councilman will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Jaworski. We're going to have a series of these. Item D2, ordinance 1915, an ordinance to approve the conveyance of title for the unimproved part of the First Street right-of-way lying in the south half of the northeast quarter and in the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 26, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, to be vacated by ordinance 1914 from the city of Papillion to the Papillion, Missouri, to the Papio, Missouri River Natural Resource District. Councilmember introduced, Mr. Glover. Item D3, ordinance 1916, an ordinance to approve the vacation of the unimproved parts of Jefferson Street, Monroe Street, Beetle Street, Addition Street, and the alley right-of-way lying within or between blocks 21, 22, and 23 in the northwest quarter, Section 26, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, with title retained by the city of Papillion. Introduction? Introduced by Councilwoman Klug. D4, ordinance 1917, an ordinance to approve the conveyance of title for the unimproved parts of Jefferson Street, Monroe Street, Beetle Street, Addition Street, and the alley right-of-way lying within or between blocks 21, 22, and 23 in the northwest quarter of Section 26, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, to be vacated by ordinance 1916 from the city of Papillion to the Papio, Missouri River Natural Resource District. Councilmember to introduce?
Mayor, this is Councilman Gaines. I'll introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Gaines. D5, ordinance 1918, an ordinance to approve the vacation of the unimproved parts of Addition Street in the northwest quarter, Section 26, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, with title thereto retained by the city of Papillion. Councilmember will introduce.
Councilman Ingberg will introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Ingberg. D6, an ordinance to approve the conveyance of title for the unimproved parts of Addition Street in the northwest quarter of Section 26, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, to be vacated by ordinance 1918 from the city of Papillion to PW and RD Enterprises. Councilman will introduce. Introduced by Councilman Stube. And an ordinance to to rename Fall Creek Road abutting lots 407 to 421 Eagle Ridge to be South Fall Creek Road. And Councilmember to introduce? Introduced by Councilman Sunday. Item D8, ordinance 1921. An ordinance to approve Papillion Municipal Code, Section 11712, to provide for amendments to fireworks sales applications to provide for an effective date. Councilmember to introduce? Introduced by Councilwoman Klug. Item F1. An ordinance to approve a change of zone from AG agricultural to R4 multifamily residential for the property legally described as the west half of the northwest quarter of Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located northwest of 117th Street and Lincoln Road. The applicant is Pinecrest Homes, LLC, North Shore 2. This was postponed from the April 21st meeting. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1829? Motion by Councilman Stube. Second by Councilman Glover. Any council discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Sunday. Mumgarde. Gaines.
Yes.
Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stube. Engberg.
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F2, resolution R200044. Resolution to approve a final plat for the property legally described as the west half of the northwest quarter, Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located northwest of 117th Street and Lincoln Road. The applicant is Pinecrest Homes, LLC. Again, postponed from the April 21st meeting. And is there a motion to approve resolution R200044? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Klug. Any proponents or opponents? Any council discussion?
Hello.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Randy Kushak with Lamper Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road, Omaha, Nebraska, here on behalf of the applicant Pinecrest Homes. Also joined on the Zoom call today with Pat Sullivan of Adams & Sullivan, also representing the client. Just wanted to give a little background to this plat. As you had mentioned, this was postponed from the April 21st meeting. Due to COVID, the applicant decided to wait a little bit on this plat. Now that it appears that we have a vaccine and we're headed in a positive path, and the housing market continues to move along, he's decided to bring that back forward. The plat that was presented at planning had 108 lots. During the time frame, he has looked at his lot product, and we've brought this plat to 105 lots, or 103 lots, my apologies. Very similar to, or the exact layout that we had provided to planning at the time, and just a slightly shift of some lot dimensions. I'll be available for any questions if you have any.
Appreciate that. Any council discussion? Is there a motion to approve resolution R2000? Oh, we did the motion. So we got council discussion. We've had the introduction. Please vote.
Sunday. Mumgarde. Gaines.
Yes.
Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stube. Engberg.
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F4, resolution R200046. Resolution to approve the sewer and water connection agreement for SID number 341 North Shore 2. What's that? I'll come back at it then. Again, postponed from the April 21st meeting. Is there a motion to approve resolution R200046? I did right in the middle of talking, so I figured I'll go ahead and finish this and come back to it. The Zoom thing's getting to me. Motion by Councilman Glover, second by Councilman Jaworski. They're related items, so I figured I'd go back and forth on them. Any proponents or opponents? And again, the applicant was on, and we'll carry that over for this as well. Any council discussion? Please vote. F4.
Sunday. Mumgarde. Gaines.
Yes.
Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stube. Engberg.
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. So item F3, related, resolution R200045. It's a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve the North Shore 2 subdivision agreement. This public hearing was opened and continued indefinitely again back in April, so it's a continuous, so it's already open. So I'll just call for proponents or opponents. See none in the room. See none on the line. Again, the applicant is on, so we'll carry that over. I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve resolution R200045? Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Sunday. Any discussion? Please vote.
Sunday, Mumgarde, Gaines,
Yes.
Glover, Jaworski, Klug, Stube, Ingberg,
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F5, resolution R210002, a resolution to approve the extension of COVID-19 emergency paid sick leave for full-time and part-time employees. Is there a motion to approve resolution R210002? Councilman Jaworski introduces, makes motion. Second by Councilman Glover. Any proponents or opponents? See none in the room. See none online. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday, Mumgarde, Gaines,
Yes.
Glover, Jaworski, Klug, Stube, Ingberg,
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F6, resolution R210003, a resolution to approve the dedication of street right-of-way for First Street. Motion to approve resolution R210003. Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Jaworski. Any proponents or opponents? None in the room. None online. Council discussion. Please vote.
Sunday, Mumgarde, Gaines,
Yes.
Glover, Jaworski, Klug, Stube, Ingberg, Councilman Ingberg,
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item E1, ordinance 1913, an ordinance to require the wearing of facial coverings under certain circumstances to abate the COVID-19 epidemic. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Before the first person comes off, I do want to give a little bit of background just for context. December 1st, the council did pass a resolution that was unanimously approved. And a resolution is just a statement. It's not an ordinance or a law. Encouraging people to take all kinds of mitigation effects, typical ones you hear about, social distancing, hygiene, all of those things, in order to help mitigate the risk. And so that was adopted unanimously in December. So that statement still holds as far as the stance of the council, encouraging all the various mitigation efforts. Part of that, with the various mitigation efforts, the state health department and the county health department have been using the Swiss cheese analogy, that multiple layers of mitigation working together. And the idea, and so basically the resolution was reinforcing that concept. And the idea that each layer, some folks will see value in it, some won't. So it'd be proponents and opponents on each individual layer. There'll be some people that support it, some don't. Some of the layers are going to have general broad acceptance, social distancing, good hygiene. Generally, most people wouldn't disagree on those items. Some of the individual layers are going to have general acceptance, but some concerns. A mask, would probably fall into that category. And some of the layers encourage ultimate treatments that the current mainstream medical doesn't accept. So education, and again, proponents and opponents, vitamin B3 or oregano oils, those types of things probably fall into that. But no matter the layer or the level of acceptance, the idea that each individual uses multiple layers that are appropriate for them and for the situation, and the more layers of mitigation, the lower the chances of transmission. General concept of the Swiss cheese. For tonight, the public hearing is only about one of the layers, and that's the masks. So in the public hearing, discussion of mask is appropriate. What the public hearing and the ordinance is not addressing the other layers. So what is out of scope for tonight's discussion are those other layers. We're not talking any of those other layers that I had mentioned. So if the discussion does venture out into those areas, I may kind of, hey, we're getting out of scope of the public hearing. So kind of a heads up on that. What the ordinance really is the triggers to start and stop the mandate. There's various methods and various reasons for testing. There's different methods of determining the trajectory of the COVID curve. Each individual is probably going to accept some, disagree with some. There won't. The introduced ordinance tonight uses one specific measure of a rolling average of hospitalization rates as the trigger to enable the mandate and then to disallow the mandate. And it doesn't talk about any other tests as the trigger. I say that so discussion about the hospitalization rate as the trigger is absolutely within the scope of the public hearing. Other tests, PCR, cycles of PCR, that type of thing, the ordinance isn't about those things. So that is out of scope for the public hearing, the other testing mechanism. So the intent of this, and I think there's some miscommunication or misunderstanding, the introduced ordinance does not immediately put a mask mandate in place. When we approve this, a mask mandate is not in place tomorrow. I think some people thought that that was the case. What is being put in place is the mechanism to have a mask mandate with those triggers. And so the triggering of the mask mandate would become automatic with this ordinance. A few reminders just to help to guide the testimony. The mandate, with the exception of the automatic trigger to enable it, is the same mandate, the same ordinance we already had a public hearing on. So that testimony that we had previously, we took about 3 hours of testimony, and that was only about a month ago. So that's still fresh with the council, and it is in the official minutes. So if you want to testify on that and you want to refer back to a previous testimony, feel free to do that. And if you don't want to repeat it, if you want to repeat it, you're free to do that as well, but it is in the record. Because of that previous 3 hours where we gave everybody 5 minutes, for tonight, because it's fresh, we're going to have a 3-minute time limit. So we'll keep that in mind. And I will give a warning when we're getting close, just like I did last time. For decorum, and for the most part, it went real well last time, but for decorum, I'm going to just remind people to respect the speaker. No comments, no clapping, no booing, no supporting, no disapproving. And then the order of the testimony, and this is because we're virtual, I got to figure out the right way to control it. We're going to handle the testimony for the people that are physically at City Council first, and we'll work all the way through those. Once everybody that's here physically is done speaking, then we'll jump to Zoom, the people that are actually logged onto a computer. And what I'm going to ask the Zoom people to do is, if you want to speak, in the chat window, type your name and address. That way we have it for the official record. And I'll use that as the cue list to call you and unmute you. So we have some organization through that. Once we work through the people that are logged in through Zoom, that'll leave the people that are logged in on the telephone. That one will be a little bit harder to control because people have to mute and unmute themselves. And we'll just ask them to be courteous, unmute and speak. But when you do, we do need name and address for the record. And I think that'll work through a logical fashion the best way. So finally, if you're not speaking, respect the speakers. If you're on Zoom, stay muted unless you are speaking. And if a line won't mute and it's disrupting people hearing, we may remove that person. We haven't had to do that in any meeting yet. We've been able to control them, but that is an option we hold. And then if you're speaking, just stay on the topic, stay within the time frame, state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, before we get
Yes,
started,
sir.
I'd like to make a point of order as to the official record that the city's creating here. I think there's some inaccuracies in here that I'd like to get straightened away before we get started.
Go ahead.
It suggests in the synopsis and the recommendation that this ordinance is completely sanctioned by the Safety Committee and the Board of Health, which is not true. The last ordinance was. We've not had another convening of the Safety Committee or the Board of Health to call into question this particular new ordinance, because it is a brand new ordinance. Despite what you just said, Mr. Mayor, it's a brand new ordinance. And I, by the way, do disagree with limiting the time to 3 minutes, because it is a new ordinance. Some things have changed in the last month, and the numbers of hospitalizations anyway have continued to go down, even while maybe the total number of cases has gone up. So given all that, I do not think that the official record should suggest in any way that this has the sanction of the Board of Health or the Safety Committee, because it does not.
The only counter to that, and again, these are for the minutes, so people see both sides. The Public Safety Committee, which was not a unanimous vote, that was a 3-1 vote, and the Public Safety, which was a unanimous vote, their recommendations were for the mask mandate, and they had a date specific that it would be in place, which was the end of February, which matched the other municipalities. If their recommendation would have been followed, we would still be under a mask mandate. So I think from an intent purpose, what's being introduced tonight is the exact same ordinance with the exception of the trigger that re-enables it. So in my mind, it does follow the intent of what Public Safety and Board of Health meant. So I think we're consistent, but I respect your point. Any other council discussion before we start?
Mayor.
More discussion, but clarifying points. Okay. Oh,
Mayor.
Mr. Gaines. Mr. Gaines.
Yes, I'm just going to ask if we could take the minutes from the 2 public hearings on ordinance 1911 and then the council discussion, the minutes, and put them all as part of the official record of this meeting, so that while I understand that they don't necessarily carry over to this meeting because it's a separate ordinance, I would like them to be included so that the people that can't come back and speak today, that their opinions and testimony still moves forward with this essentially same ordinance with different, some different sunset, et cetera. So.
Thank you. I don't think that takes a motion. So I think unless there's council objection on the procedural process, I think both Mr. Sunday's point and Mr. Gaines' request will just note as a part of the official record. So those are recorded and noted, and then they can make the tie that way if you're okay with that. Mr. Ingberg.
Mayor, since we've already, even though this is a new ordinance, it still contains the ordinance that was already approved 7-1, I believe, previously. I would like to encourage those who are going to testify, like we do other public hearings, to focus on the trigger, because that is the only change that we're making, is making the trigger rather than reconvene and go through the process each time hospitalization rises at equals or rises above 20%. So to testify again about the value or the use of masks, whether it's good or bad, I think that was resolved in the sense of a vote previously, and I hate to have us go through all of that again when the ordinance is still there. We're just changing the trigger, so I would encourage people to address that one item as we've done with other ordinances through the years.
Thank you. So I think both Mr. Sunday's and Mr. Ingberg's are general recommendations to people, and we'll reflect those in the minutes as well.
And
Mr.
Mr. Mayor, I, as a believer in free speech, would encourage anybody out here to say whatever you want to say.
And again, decorum. Please, no clapping. I just talked about decorum in here. People are free to speak about anything, but the council bylaws, when it does talk about public hearings, it has to be on topic. It's not an open public comment period. One of the things of the Open Meetings Act is we can only discuss items that are on the agenda, and the agenda is that specific item, which is the one layer of the Swiss cheese. So again, if we get off topic, we're actually violating the Open Meetings Act in my mind. And if Mr. Thielen disagrees with that, I'd look for him to that. So we do need to stay on topic to be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act of the state. With that, and then I think the only other reminder, because it happened last time, there was a couple of times some council member asked a question of somebody. This is not an open dialogue Q&A. That's not what the public hearing is. It's for us to take testimony. But if a council member does ask somebody a question, I do stop the timer. I don't count that discussion time against that individual. So with that, the public hearing is open. I typically do proponents at first and then opponents, but just because of the method, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to ask people to come up one at a time and go ahead and speak and state your name for the record. And we'll start with those in the council chambers. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll try to hurry. My name is James Tyler. I am the pastor of Grace Baptist Church, Papillion at 205 East Halleck Street. I'm the father of 3 children. My oldest is 15, so I'm not new at parenting anymore. One of the things that I've discovered raising children is that children tend to try to get away with whatever they can by pushing the envelope, finding out what the boundaries are, discerning the difference between a major and a minor infraction of the law. When caught in a transgression of the law set by their parents, children will engage in one of the typical lines of defense where they point to the good that they might have done by transgressing the law. They denigrate the law as being too onerous, it's too hard to follow, or they seek to engage in a more nuanced discussion of whether the law took into account their particular situation. The point is that children like to find fault with the law, not themselves, not unlike, with one notable exception, the body before me this evening. The Constitution of the United States is the law of this land, not any Congress or council, and the First Amendment reads thus: Congress shall make no law establishing religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This body has opted to institute a mandate which forces the members and guests of my church to dress a certain way. This body has chosen to restrict the freedoms of Grace Baptist Church of Papillion in the free exercise of our religion, but you all don't see it that way. You want me to see the good that you might be doing by sinning, by transgressing the law of this land. You want me to note how noble your intentions are. You want me to appreciate that the Constitution is preventing you from exercising your judgment to the extent you believe you should be able to. Indeed, you think the Constitution is too onerous while you are noble. You want me to appreciate the nuances of the situation we're in and see how the Constitution wasn't taking into account your superior wisdom when it comes to how members of my congregation and guests of my congregation dress themselves.
1 minute.
The thing you do not seem to comprehend is that when the Constitution prohibits you from doing what you want, it is working precisely as it is supposed to. The Constitution is supposed to limit your power, so you choose to ignore it. Anyone responsible for this mandate being in effect ought to be ashamed of themselves. You have sown discord and trouble into my church because now I have members who aren't sure who they should listen to, you or me, because I've chosen to ignore your mandate. I've done my study.
30
I've prayed.
seconds.
Pardon me?
30 seconds.
Thank you. I have my reasons for not enforcing it. I do not believe it is in my purview to dress anyone in my church. My Bible tells me I will give an account to God for how I have pastored. Your disregard for the law of the land puts you in a position to be judged by God in the same way that I will. Stricter judgment. I would ask you to consider whether you're prepared to face the same judgment I will as a pastor, since you have superseded my authority as such. I disagree with not having to have a public hearing every time this stupid mask mandate comes into effect. Thank you.
Sir,
Thank
sir,
you. Mr. Mungard.
since you brought up the Constitution, I'll ask you a question. Do you accept that the Constitution is the law of the land as interpreted by the Supreme Court of the United States?
Yes.
So if the Supreme Court of the United States has said that health mandates, requirements such as mandatory vaccinations are consistent with the First Amendment, then you would accept that and I should accept that.
No,
I should not accept that?
I would not.
Okay.
I wouldn't presume to tell
So
you what
you're-
you should do.
So you're going to choose to interpret the Constitution as you wish rather than as the United States Supreme Court?
I believe it's pretty clear. The Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of or prohibiting the free exercise of religion. The moment that a city or state or national government begins to tell us how we should and shouldn't dress in the confines of a church, in a place of worship, during a worship service, you've superseded the Constitution. This is
Well,
not a
here-
nuanced discussion.
Well, here, I'll tell you the difference. You're free to take that view any way you want.
Thank you.
I, however, took an oath. We all took an oath to abide by the Constitution. And if the Constitution says what the Supreme Court says it says, then I cannot agree with you. It would be a violation of my oath. So thank you for expressing your point of view, but I cannot accept it.
Thank you. Next. If you'd state your name and address for the record.
Matt Matheson, 802 North Beetle. I'm going to be real quick. You guys passed the last one. Seems to me you're not very good at your jobs because we're back here. I think you should be back here repassing it every time because you did this, not us. I'm done here because I don't feel like wasting any more of my evening with this.
Thank you. Next. Welcome.
Hello, name is Tim Hall. I'm from 901 Michael Drive, Papillion. I'll stress that. I'd like to thank the City Council again for the opportunity to express my concerns again regarding the pending decision whether to enact a mandate. To begin, I want to highlight that I am a tax-paying voting resident of Papillion. I did not drive 3 hours from my home in another state to put on a show to influence legislation where I have no standing. I live in Ward 1, and I want the Ward 1 councilman to know that I will campaign and vote based upon your actions here. So I won't, based off of the inclusion of the data from last month or early in the month, I won't include the data of the cases that I compared between Sarpy, Douglas, and Lancaster counties. A little new data here shows North and South Dakota. North Dakota imposed heavy mask or heavy mandates on behavior early on, and then they got to a mask mandate. South Dakota even held a Sturgis rally. Not much difference that the mandates imposed by North Dakota versus South. So just want to throw that out there. Want to say also that
if you want to leave that behind, we can put it in the record as well.
Absolutely, I will. So from to repeat myself from last December's testimony, you should not enact mandates that do not produce the desired effect. You should also not be enacting laws that go into and out of force without city council action. It's apparent that you want this mandate so desperately that the day the previous mandate terminated, you rushed ordinance 1913 onto the agenda. Why couldn't you at least wait to see if the trend of decreasing hospital beds occupied by COVID-19 patients would continue? That's from the Nebraska COVID dashboard, which is, I think, what we are all using. You see how we went below the 15 or the 20% threshold December 8th. We've been below the 15% threshold since the 19th of December. The need for a mandate has passed. Now, speaking of data, you also claim to have used the state of Nebraska COVID-19 dashboard to determine the mandate termination status. But if that's where you get your numbers, then you illegally subjected the citizens of Papillion to 10 extra days of mandate before you were so kind as to terminate the requirement on 14 December. The numbers that you used were the 14-day rolling average of staffed hospital beds. Right down at the bottom here, it says 14-day average. That's your average you were using. Trying to cut out some parts that I'd planned on, but with the 3-minute limit, I'm have to cut through some of this.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I won't read it, but here is the ordinance, the when effective portion of the ordinance. It's based off of a 14-day and a 7-day rolling average. Do you realize that both using a 7-day and a 14 rolling average, you could have both conditions true at the same time? That sounds a little ridiculous and wonder if it's even legal. So I'll just cut to the end. I'm here again to just implore you that to look at the real data before you deciding for another mask mandate. Appreciate the numbers are continuing to trend down and the vaccines are becoming available. I presented clear data showing that the mandates do not work in the greater population, and reimposing this mandate will only show that you have no respect for your neighbors. It will show that despite continued positive trends, you do not trust the people of Papillion to decide what's best for themselves and their families. So I may choose to do different than you. That's all right, because that's how it works in a free society.
Thank you.
So thank you for your time.
Next.
Hello, everybody. My name is Allie French at 4213 North 172nd Street in Omaha. I just have a few points to make this evening. I'm going to try and stay on topic as much as possible for you. I do want to point out that Supreme Court Justice Alito has previously stated that that this coronavirus pandemic has led to previously unimaginable restrictions on individual liberty. and that the COVID crisis has served as a sort of constitutional stress test. The Supreme Court ruling that you are speaking of has absolutely nothing to do with vaccines. It has to do with the taxes for vaccines when they refused it. So you should check up on your Supreme Court ruling readings again. It was really rude of you to attack a pastor of this community with false facts. Had nothing to do with forcing vaccination.
Please stay on topic.
Yes, my apologies. Moving forward, I was going to state the same thing that he had mentioned about the differences in the 14-day rolling average and the 7-day rolling average. I'd also gone through and was reading the municipal corporation rulings, and it is to be noted that statutes and ordinances that fix crimes, which by the way is what an ordinance does, means you are making every person who doesn't wear a mask a criminal. An ordinance regulatory nature must be clear, certain, and definite. None of that is true for this ordinance. Whether he will incur penalties or actions or not, this ordinance must be worded leaving its substantive elements to the caprices of either judge or jury. In other words, the law must be complete and definite. And again, it's not. There is the wording that you guys have leaves a lot of questions. It leaves people who have to experience this mandate out in public unsure of what steps to take, which leads to calling of the police when somebody may or may not be complying with the mask mandate, creating unnecessary work for your police officers, which I noticed in your guys' ordinance, it also states that there is no incurment of costs, and that's not quite true. There may not be any cost because you're not supplying masks for people, but there is a cost on both your community and this city council that you guys will have to take into consideration when making budgets in the following year. I know you guys didn't want to hear about PCR tests, but the fact of the matter is if you don't have symptoms, you're not spreading anything. Asymptomatic transmission has never been proven. There's not been one clinical observation of asymptomatic spread. If it did, we would see a whole lot more sick people from the shedding vaccines that people are given in school, but we don't pull those people out for a month after giving a vaccine that's a live virus and has proven to cause asymptomatic spread.
1 minute.
That is all I have for you guys today. I'd like to submit this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You can give it to the clerk. Thank you. Next. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Ben Tapper, 16909 Burke Street. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I've been serving the Omaha area for 9 years. I'm putting a lot on the line by being here. I've lost patience by speaking out and taking the stance that I have. I'm putting my livelihood on the line, my family's livelihood on the line by speaking out. I just want to make that clear. The Bible states that wherever your treasure is, your heart will there be also. If my treasure was in making money, I'd have a mask on my face and keep my mouth shut. My treasure is in the truth. My treasure is in serving others. I know full well that we're being lied to, that we're not being told the truth. The CDC is putting out propaganda and manipulation of data. If you look at the National Vital Statistics Reporting System, they have combined COVID-19 with influenza and pneumonia. Why? To keep a blind eye to the real numbers of influenza. Where did influenza go? It just up and disappeared. Nobody's asking those questions. People said, you need to go to the hospitals. You need to see what I see. I went to the hospitals. They're empty. These little tents that they had earlier out this year in front of the hospitals were empty. Not a single patient. I have a family member that's a CFO of a hospital in a large city. He laughed and said, our numbers aren't even pre-COVID. The death rate, has anyone looked at the death count, the total death count? 2.85 million people died last year in 2019. 2.83 million people died in 2020. If this is the deadliest pandemic ever in history, shouldn't we have the death count through the roof?
1 minute.
Am I wrong? So why are we being lied to? Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated that if we need to put medical freedom in the Constitution because the time will come when medicine forms into an undercover dictatorship, restricting the art of healing to one class of men. And I believe that time is now. Thomas Jefferson also said that if the people let the government decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their body will soon be in a sorry state as those souls who live under tyranny. This is not just about a vaccine mandate. I thought it was all about a vaccine mandate, but it's much bigger than that.
30 seconds.
This is a global agenda to change society as we know it. And the corona is a Trojan horse to implement this agenda. I pray that this fear mongering lifts the veil over your eyes, because it's blinding the people right now to the truth. I thank you for your time, but I pray that you wake up and see that. Look at the global reset, research that, research Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, Event 201. These are real things that are being played out, but that people have their heads in the sand.
Next.
Hey, Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Gaines.
is Dr. Tapper still available?
Is what?
Is the last speaker still available?
Yeah, if you come up, Councilman Gaines has a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Who am I speaking to?
Could you just real quickly, could you give me the numbers, the death numbers for 2019 and 2020 again, and where you found those? I didn't know if there was CDC website or where you got that data from.
Yeah, that's right from the CDC. Now, if you do a Google search, you have to dig for these numbers. I can send you these numbers, but they're from the National Vital Statistics Reporting System for the CDC. The total death count is roughly the same as it was last year and the year before.
Okay.
And that is a fact. And I would be glad to send you all the data on that.
Yeah, I know where to find the CDC numbers. I haven't looked at them for 4 months or maybe 3 months, but I will go back and look at them again. I just wanted to make sure that's where you're getting your data from. So,
Right, 100%.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Jen Camp. I'm at 13220 Larimore Avenue in Omaha. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will, Romans 12:2. I've studied health, wellness, and nutrition for over 15 years. I have no degree, but neither does Bill Gates, and people trust him for health information. Our area hospitals will continue to stay full of COVID patients. Don't believe me? Just look up the amount of money they receive when a case is admitted. I find it amazing that a disease with a less than a 0.5% chance of dying, especially if you don't have comorbidities, can scare millions of people into wearing an ineffective mask. Yet one person dies every 36 seconds of heart disease. Over 606,000 people have died of cancer with 1.8 million cases. Over 26.8 million people have diabetes. And people are not scared enough to eat well. People are not scared enough to quit smoking, get exercise, quit eating sugar, et cetera, et cetera. Well, why would they be? The media isn't telling them that those things are bad. Even doctors, most with little to no nutritional education, will tell people sugar is fine in moderation. Here, maybe take this pill to help you lose weight and keep my pockets lined, and maybe refer you to this nutritionist who follows government guidelines that recommend cheap processed foods as your #1 source of sustenance so you can keep coming in to see me. If health is so important, why are vending machines full of junk food and soda in hospitals? Why are organic and whole foods sitting in the health food section of grocery stores? Why is junk food so cheap and readily available, yet whole organic nutrient-dense food so expensive? Why are endocrine disruptors allowed in receipts, cosmetics, packaging for food, and food-like products that we eat? We live in a country where obesity is an epidemic, McDonald's is an icon, and Coca-Cola is classic. This is not about health. Hospitals in this area are almost always full. My father, who passed away in early 2020, was in and out of these hospitals the last year of his life. And the #1 thing I heard when he had to go to the ER is he's waiting for a bed to open. My father was diagnosed with heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and AFib, among other things. And he had to wait for a bed because the hospitals were full. Something I frequently heard the nurses talk about while visiting him was being short-staffed. You can walk through almost any hospital in Omaha and surrounding areas and see a bunch of empty beds. Folks, we are being manipulated, and they found out what really works to keep people who follow them blindly under control: fear. People have been convinced to be so scared of something with nearly 100% chance of survival to do their part to stop the spread. So why not do your part to stop these other diseases that have a lower chance of survival?
1 minute.
This country seems to be run by a food and pharmaceutical industry. We even have a Food and Drug Administration, and no, they don't make money if there are no addictions to feed or sicknesses to treat. How many cases would we have if we didn't test asymptomatic people? And if masks are a tool, why are there disclaimers on their boxes saying they don't prevent COVID? Why do I see them laying around on the ground and not being disposed of in hazardous waste bins? Why are there not instructions on how to use them properly or what size the holes need to be to block the virus?
30
Why
seconds.
is OSHA, the actual mask experts, not training us on their proper use? Are the OSHA representatives here telling us how well they work to prevent the spread? Some may say, I do not care about the less than half a percentage of people that have died from this, but do you? Were you there telling them sugar was bad for them, to get outside, breathe fresh air, walk often, get plenty of sleep, lift heavy things, the dangers of insulin resistance, and the importance of avoiding toxins? I am. I'm a certified wellness coach. What are you doing for them?
Thank you. Next. Few people joined us online, so just real quick, the order we're going, we're taking care, all the testimony that's physically here. Then we'll go to the Zoom that's logged in. And if you are in that, and we have a couple, if you type in your name and address for the record, and then I'll use that as the cue to call that, and then we'll get to the telephones. Go ahead.
My name is Michael Tiedemann. I live at 101 Somerset Drive, Papillion, Nebraska. Mayor and council members, on December 1st, I stood here and informed you that I'm completely against the city council passing a mask mandate. I stand before you now with the same message. Councilman Stubbe put forward the amendment to the first ordinance, taking away what he called an arbitrary sunset date and replacing it with what he felt was a more recognizable measure of using the rolling average of cases. Every member of this council voted in favor of that amendment. The same day that ordinance 1911 expired, December 14th, ordinance 1913 is put on the agenda for the council meeting on December 15th. Ordinance 1913 has the ability to go into and out of effect weekly, if not daily. This requires the citizens to have to check the rolling averages daily to see if they will face fines or not. This measure is totally about control. If it wasn't about control, there wouldn't be such a sudden push to move the goalpost on the citizens. This council has been given a unique opportunity to correct the government overreach it perpetrated on the citizens in December. Are you going to engage in the same quackery that you did before? Last time I spoke before you, I stated I do not trust this will stop at just a mask mandate. Let me refine that statement a bit. I do not trust this council to protect the liberties of its citizens. The monolithic groupthink that was on full display during the passing of 1911 has done nothing to bolster my trust in the elected officials that sit before me. I want to remind you that you do not rule over the citizens of this city. You govern through their consent. I will also remind that each one of you swore an oath of office. In that oath, you swore to protect and uphold the Constitution, which by extensions means to protect and safeguard the liberties of the citizens that elected you to office. Councilman Mumgard, in your deliberation of the ordinance 1911 on December 3rd, you mentioned people seeing this as a violation of their liberties, to which you said that it is a desire for liberty that cannot exist. With all due respect, you are not the person, nor is this council, not even the state or federal government, the entity that bestowed our rights upon us. Our rights were bestowed upon us by God the Creator. They are inalienable, and they have been paid for with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is the role of government to affirm those rights, not to subvert them. You cannot legislate risk out of a society. Even attempting to do so will be a fool's errand, because the risk will still exist, and all you will have accomplished is disenfranchising the citizens of their God-given rights.
1 minute.
I want you to take a good hard look at the citizens sitting behind me and the ones that have been restricted from being in this room, and ask yourselves, do their rights mean so little to you that you are willing to curtail them for a completely unproven measure of false security? Councilman Sunday, in your deliberation on the past ordinance, you hit the nail on the head when you stated, this doesn't feel like home anymore. This doesn't have the small town feel. I am truly saddened that the leaders of this city, the place I have called home all my life, are willing to put aside the rights of the citizens in a despotic attempt to join the leaders of other cities in a grab for power. Meanwhile, you pat yourselves on the back because you have bought into the false ideal that this is the right thing to do.
30 seconds.
You must stop this foolish virtue signaling, not pass another inane and overreaching mandate.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Jacqueline Nelson, and I live at 803 North Polk here in Papillion. Truth is, I had two very separate speeches written. I brought them both with me, and I've been sitting back there the whole time trying to figure out which one I thought fit the best. The one I'm picking is short, sweet, to the point, and it'll take me about 30 seconds. I'm not going to stand up here and rehash everything you've already heard about mandating masks. Except for one councilman, it is obvious that trying to appeal to you all on the grounds of a mandate being unconstitutional, unhealthy, unethical, un-American, and unuseful is of to no avail. So I will try to appeal to y'all on one more ground, a ground that hopefully I would think we would all agree on. Simply your word. Frankly, you got your way. You won. You got your mandate. However, the numbers went down, and may I add, at no extra cost, that given the short amount of time that the mandate was in place, there was absolutely no possible way that the masks had anything to do with it. The mandate was no longer in place, and you all scrambled to find a way to bring it back, with the exception of one. Even if that means trying to enforce it without any more meetings, readings, or options to speak, by making it automatically effective whenever the hospital beds occupied by COVID patients go up to 20%. However, in my opinion, this is worse than the mandate itself. You all gave your word. The numbers went down. The mandate expired. End of story.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Lorene Renante, 1108 Park Drive in Papillion. So here we are again. It keeps going around and around in my head. How did we get here? I wonder, how did this ordinance come to life and who actually wrote it? It seems to be very sloppy. I am sure that most of you actually did think that there was a beginning and there was an end to this mask mandate, unless that's your real goal, to never let this end. From my first talking point back on December 2nd, 2020, this is nothing more than local government overreach. And although I am not surprised, because nothing surprises me these days, I am extremely disappointed in this council, with the exception of Councilman Sunday. I sat in one of the rows right very behind me on December 3rd, 2020, hoping that some of you would actually come to your senses. Clearly, as the evening went on, that was not going to happen. That public hearing meeting, or the third reading, I should say, is when you all get to discuss, but we don't get to say anything else. You guys introduce an amendment and then another amendment and another amendment to override that amendment. Seriously, did one of you not think that this was going to end or not end? So I don't need any of you to lecture me. It has everything to do with control. It's not about my health and about how I care for my fellow citizen. This mask mandate is making you all feel paralyzed about something that you cannot control. No one can control a virus. If your life depends on wearing a mask, if you have some type of an illness or it compromises your health, then you have already had that conversation with your doctor. Your doctor would tell you what foods to avoid, what you should and shouldn't do in public spaces, or whether you should go out. I'm a 60-year-old woman. I do not need a city council to lecture me on what is right and what is wrong. I am very responsible. I am very reliable. I pay my property taxes twice a year at the county courthouse that pays for your salaries.
1 minute.
I just can't imagine how I've lived as long as I have without your guidance and the lecture of how terrible and irresponsible I am. I am very healthy, and I am not going to make anyone sick without wearing a mask. In the proclamation from the Governor Ricketts on March 6th, it was posted, or which wasn't posted until March 13th, 2020, there was an emergency. Why did 7 days go by? So now we brought it down to Papillion, where Mayor Black signed a declaration on March 16th, 10 days from the original date of March 6th, 2020 from the governor, and 3 days after the governor posted his proclamation. Why the lag time? It is now January 5th, 2021, 9 to 10 months after the original date of March 6th. And here we are talking about an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Right afterwards. Yeah. Go ahead and give it to the clerk.
Brittany Alexandra, and I'm on 96 and 370. Okay. So hello, Papillion. Here we are yet again. And so sorry we missed you 2 weeks ago while most of you were being quarantined because it looks as if the mask didn't work that well for you. Anyways, here we are again. Why? Why are we here? The cases are up, but the hospital numbers are down. You do know that the testing is faulty. The CDC now groups influenza, COVID, pneumonia all together, which is called a PIC. So how can we tell a positive COVID when it's not just testing for COVID? The following chart that I just handed you guys, the following chart is from the Sarpy County Health Department, COVID-19. Mrs. Schramm, health director, denied a public record request from a citizen in which they asked what cycles the PCR tests are set at and what makes a positive case. This request was denied. How can we take the data reported by her when she has not told us what the test means and what makes a positive test when the Wuhan virus never, oh goodness, when the Wuhan virus never has been isolated? How can we, oh good Lord. The Wuhan virus has never been isolated in a lab and proven to exist using the postulate. Also, I have been to just about every mask mandate meeting, and I don't know what this means, but I find it very interesting. Wahoo and Blair did not pass their mandate. I know, speaking to the Blair City Council members afterwards, they said they felt as if it was an overreach and it is not their job to tell you to do with your body. But what is odd is Wahoo received $185,000 and Blair didn't even apply for the COVID relief fund and didn't apply for the local government reimbursement program either. And they didn't approve a mandate. Like I said, I don't know what it all means, but I find it very interesting that Papillion has received just about $5 million. And Mr. Mumgard, it was from my understanding that the reason you want to pass a mandate is for the irresponsible people. Irresponsible, I'm confused because 80 to 90% of people who are testing positive in the hospital are overweight and vitamin D deficient.
1 minute.
So maybe, like we've been saying for the past 9 months, let's mandate healthy living and vitamins. Since I'm a Papillion resident, if you do pass this yet again, I better see some hazard bins around the city rather than seeing them all over the parking lots. One more thing to add. Abortion was once again the #1 cause of death globally in 2020, with a record 42.7 million.
30 seconds.
Where's the pandemic in that?
Thank you. Next.
My name is Heidi Ludwig, and I live off 84th and 370. So I could stand up here and talk about the science, how the virus particles are so small that they easily pass through masks, leaving them ineffective in preventing the spread of coronavirus. I could talk about the negative health implications caused by mask wearing, such as increased risk of infection, the spread of viral illness, impaired immune system, hindered detoxification that occurs via exhalation, headaches, skin infections, staph infections, bacterial infections, and other physical, emotional, and psychological effects. Or just the simple fact that wearing a mask reduces your blood and tissue oxygenation, which when combined with increased carbon dioxide levels can be deadly. Or I could cite the 2 recent studies, the first out of Wuhan, China, which screened nearly 10 million residents, and the second from the University of Florida on December 22nd of 2020, which found no asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic spread. But instead, I want to talk about discrimination. For the first time in my life, I have felt discriminated on almost a weekly basis. I have a medical exemption from a doctor. I have a copy handy on my phone to show any business who requests to see it. But what I'm finding is businesses don't want to see it. Instead, they would rather tell me I'm not allowed in their store. I'm told it's just the law and they're following it, or they're just following their own rules. So instead, I've had police called on myself and my children for simply going out to buy our groceries. Instead, I'm receiving threats from other customers when I'm out in public. It's embarrassing and it's wrong. Never in my life would I have imagined that this is the world I'm raising my 4 children in. As a Papillion resident of over 10 years, I would have hoped that the city that I proudly call home would have more faith in its residents and would stop trying to divide us further. It's unethical, it's unconstitutional. What you're doing is forcing healthy citizens to abide by measures that can result in physical and emotional harm and that impinge on their ability to move freely throughout society without discrimination.
1 minute.
For those with deeply held religious beliefs, mask mandates violate their ability to abide by natural law and follow their convictions to walk in faith, not fear. As such, the decision to wear a mask is a highly personal one and should not be universally mandated. Measures that are meant to protect the community as a whole are ineffective if they hurt individuals in that community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Courtney Gurmis. My address is 1375 County Road E in Ithaca, Saunders County. Good evening. I wanted to introduce myself. I was born and raised here in Papillion, graduated from here. I now live in Saunders County with my husband and our 4 children. We are proud Nebraskans. My mom, Joni Gassert, once Gassert Jones, served on the council, for 8 years with you guys, so she knows many of you. So as her daughter, I fully understand the calling you have to serve in government and the high demands of it on you and your families. I respect each and every one of you and thank you for serving this community. I'm here tonight to talk about our civil liberties. It's our job as Americans to stand up for what is right, whether that makes you the most popular person in the room or not. Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who would give up a little essential liberty to purchase temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety." I implore this council to err on the side of liberty tonight. Do not vote Ordinance 1913 in tonight and waive the 3 readings an issue of this capacity deserves. When you are making this large decision for your people you serve, they deserve the readings, the time to speak. This community needs that time. In Wahoo recently, it took until the 3rd reading for myself and others to lead a petition to show that the business owners and the people wanted a choice in our community. You wouldn't have known this because the news stations and the Omaha World Herald didn't cover it. Our mask mandate / ordinance got rescinded because the people spoke for liberty. Are we free in America? I don't feel free. We are Nebraskans and we should not compare ourselves to the big cities and the overpopulated areas of our country. I believe together that we can work through this. I am fully on board with businesses choosing to have a mandate of their own for their individual place of business, and that's their choice, but for the Papillion City Council to have this provision that is taking away our civil liberty to choose and the time for the people to speak their voice. If we have been living in such a pandemic, why is it that we are allowed to go out and eat unmasked at a table with whoever we want, sit, eat, visit, drink, but my child in the public school system can't even take their mask off at their desk?
1 minute.
But a student athlete can play unmasked. Your waitress risked her life for your bowl of soup. Where are the flu numbers? It just doesn't add up. Please understand the hypocrisy happening in America currently. I understand COVID is real here and staying, but I do strongly feel that it is the government overreach to put mandates on our town. I stand behind Governor Pete Ricketts' approach, encouraging people to wear a mask, but not requiring it. Let Governor Ricketts lead our great state of Nebraska in this pandemic and do not put that burden on this council.
30 seconds.
Please understand the division it's bringing to towns and the rights we need to preserve. Let us be a beacon of light like other communities, Blair, Bellevue, Ashland, Wahoo, and quit selling fear. We are responsible, free citizens of the greatest country, so let's come together and rise. The people deserve the choice, and once again, I implore all of you council members tonight to vote no for passing this ordinance. Thank you for your time and your service. Thank you.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Natasha Gall, 5522 92nd Avenue. George Santayana said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it" in 1905. From the looks of it, almost everyone in leadership of government and most of our medical professionals either learn their history and truly don't care and want to control people, or they failed history. I did not fail history, and it is my favorite subject to teach my 6 kids that I homeschool. And Councilman Mumgard, my 16-year-old schooled you on the Constitution last month, so you might want to do some more research. Councilman Sunday, what I'm about to say does not apply to you because you are standing up for liberty, and I want to thank you. Martin Niemöller was a Lutheran pastor who spoke out against the Nazis. He ended up serving 7 years as one of Hitler's personal prisoners. I didn't know this existed. He was released when the war ended, he wrote a poem. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I ask you, are you speaking out or are you giving into the money? Trust me, we would all love to not have to be speaking out, risking our relationships, because we're not the ones that stop talking to the diehard maskers. They abandon us. We honor each person's choice. We are the ones taking risks with our jobs, with our foster care licenses, myself, and even more. In fact, we are risking being the first ones put on trains. They may not be called concentration camps, but a rose called by any other name is just as sweet or bitter. Let us not forget what this nation did to anyone who even came close to resembling Japanese. You think I'm being dramatic, and you know what? I don't care, because this is Nazi Germany all over again. The only difference is social media. Anyone who passes a mask mandate is ushering in a new Nazi regime known as the people in the community who want masks to happen. Why do I say that? Because they are the ones calling the cops on their fellow shoppers, their fellow citizens, their neighbors. That is exactly how Anne Frank was found, a Dutch informer tipped off the Gestapo. I apologize if it sounds like I'm calling our police officers Gestapo. I'm really not, unless you actually support this atrocity. Instead of teaching society to be scared of a race or a culture, because we now have names for both of those, which are racist and xenophobic, we are teaching people to be afraid of those who are healthy. You are encouraging them to call the police on healthy people. Heck, even calling on sick people is too much, like what the citizens turning in Jews did. And to all of you who thinking you're so high and mighty by calling in those not wearing masks, go read some books on the Holocaust. You are aligning way more with the Nazis than with the Jews, and that should make you run to the bathroom and be sick. The Nazi regime used 4 tactics: prejudice, scapegoating, discrimination, and persecution. Sound familiar? You're being told to hate us who don't believe that in the bot science. Then you're being told that those who don't wear the masks are the cause for the outbreaks, except those of us that don't wear masks are not going and getting tested. So what's happening? And those wearing the mask should be safe, right? Then we are being kept from doctor's appointments, from weddings, from funerals, from shoppings, from church. I'm being kept from my own grandparents. And last, persecution, either by neighbors, family, or by law. Congrats, we are in Nazi Germany. John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to govern any other. Perhaps we need to turn back to God and put him back in schools. And John Adams also said, cities may be rebuilt and a people reduced to poverty may acquire fresh property, but a constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever. When the people once surrendered their share in the legislature and their right of defending the limitations upon the government and of resisting every encroachment upon them, they can never regain it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
My name's Jennifer Hicks. I live in Peru, Nebraska. And even though I'm not a Papillion resident, I'm here because, as Martin Luther King Jr. once said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. To mandate the wearing of masks would be an injustice. Your mask mandate ordinance that was previously in effect in Papillion claimed that COVID-19 poses significant risk of harm and creates an unacceptable risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Papillion. I think what you need to define is what is an acceptable or unacceptable level of risk. That's not been defined. Many who support the mandated wearing of masks have pointed to the existing legislation that exists regarding seatbelts, traffic laws, and the like. They're not the same at all. The risk of harm in the event of an accident is the reason that most people would willingly wear seatbelts. It's not the same. The same is true for speed limits, traffic signals, and stop signs. They only demand that we engage in behaviors that the majority of people would willingly participate in anyway. Failure to do so would result in real and actual risk of harm to themselves, others, or their property. Car wreck, hitting a pedestrian, acquiring damage to their vehicle. There would be little dispute that these are possible and likely consequences of failure to comply with these types of laws. However, the same does not apply to masks. The risks of not wearing a mask are not at all apparent, nor proven, nor something that people would generally agree upon and willingly comply with if they weren't compelled to do so. In fact, a November 19 article from Nebraska Medicine stated that where masks have been mandated, COVID-19 cases have actually gone up. And when have you ever seen a person asked to leave a grocery store by a business owner or another customer for not wearing shoes, or see a person jaywalking, have the cops call on them? Those are rules too, but they aren't enforced. So knowing what constitutes an unacceptable level of risk is essential, and I find it personally offensive when it's suggested that my choice to never wear a mask is a sign of a lack of compassion.
1 minute.
If we're to believe that the circumstances are as dire as we're being told, then it's not It's a far greater lack of compassion to allow an exemption for team sports during a deadly pandemic. Who made the decision that the recreational activity of team sports should be considered more essential during a pandemic than people's businesses and livelihoods? When evaluating which activities pose an unacceptable level of risk, how is it that team sports are deemed worthy of an exemption? Athletes are permitted to engage in activity free of masks, with no social distancing, engaging in physical contact, and gathering in groups of however many it takes to make up a team with no restrictions.
30 seconds.
I think you're subjecting yourself to lawsuits when you don't address that, because I'm going to tell you what. The Supreme Court recently said in New York that the people, the Jews and the Catholics, they brought their case against Andrew Cuomo, and they won. And they won because there was a disparate treatment. You're not applying and enforcing it equally. And when you're allowing exemption for a sports activity, which breaks every freaking rule of COVID prevention,
Thank
then,
you. Time.
okay, can I just give you, I'll just tell you one more thing that will fix everything right here.
Go ahead.
A solution that will satisfy everyone's position on the matter. Those who have placed their faith in masks and who believe that they are useful in keeping them safe are well within their rights to wear 2 masks instead of 1. Doing so would give them the level of protection that they believe will keep them safe, no matter what decision others around them have made with regard to masks. It would completely eliminate the problem of ever encountering a person who they feel is a threat to them for not wearing one.
Thank you.
The solution poses no threat
Time.
to anyone's rights, and it respects
Next.
every individual's
Ma'am.
rights to choose
Ma'am.
how best to protect
I've given
his
you
or her health.
I've given you an extra 30 seconds to almost to a minute. Thank you. Next. Welcome.
Hi, it's me again, Tanya Cloyd in Eagle Hills. Is that good? All right, council members, you did your part. You took action, which gave confirmation to our community that you care about us, that you're a responsible and trustworthy elected official with a big heart worthy of their vote. But now time is up. That is based on your own numbers that 7 of you and the mayor agreed to. We've met your criteria. That ends the emergency, and therefore no further action should be taken to reinstate it. I honestly think you should praise the Lord that this ordinance was so short-lived. It's truly a blessing in disguise for each one of you, even if you don't see that or understand it quite yet. Those that are for these safety measures are either being paid or being played. You follow the money or your ignorance is preyed upon. That ignorance comes in the form of an empathetic, emotional person, as well as an apathetic, phlegmatic person. Both refuse to do the research because they just rely on the science being provided by big pharma, mainstream media, and big tech. Come on, guys. Council members, if there is one thing you could take away from 2020, let it be this. The enemies of America can take us down from within without firing a single shot, just by infiltrating our schools, media, scientists, and doctors. They'll have the people and politicians bowing down to do whatever they say is best for public health, even if it isn't necessary, makes zero sense, throws the Constitution out the window, and becomes a country where a medical dictatorship is the only religion allowed. You took an oath of office that states you support the Constitution of the United States, that you are against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you will perform your duties according to the law and the best of your ability. I am here to call that into question. Have any of you seen the leaked files that revealed mass infiltration of some of the world's biggest companies, including pharmaceutical giants Pfizer and AstraZeneca? Do you know about the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals? And take notes if you don't, because you need to. Do you know that Immunization Agenda 2030, known as a global strategy to leave no one behind, is playing a critical role in achieving 13 of those 17 sustainable goals?
1 minute.
Do you know the World Health Organization is leading the strategy to include surveillance technology, data tracking, and strong social commitment, financial commitment, and political commitment from IA 2030's envision of a world where, get this, everyone, everywhere, at every age is vaccinated?
30 seconds.
There is not a conspiracy here, you guys. This has been placed a long time before COVID-19, and I've been wondering what disaster they would use to implement this reset and build their framework off the fear of the unsuspecting public. I am not playing along, and I suggest you guys stop with this emergency crap, regardless of money or science, because it's
The emergency declarations and ordinances that hurt us and get us into situations like allowing emergency use of a rushed vaccine that skips animal trials, uses aborted fetal DNA, and never even tested on impairment of fertility. No one stopped wearing a mask when your ordinance fell apart. You did your part. Now go back to the resolution instead of getting the police involved to punish citizens for breathing without covering their face. Like, what is that? Stop enabling this, okay? And whoever made this, we need to go over it. And whoever okayed it, this is a lot of false claims in here.
Welcome.
Hi, Edward Weniger, I live in Walnut Creek. If you're unwilling to accept that masks aren't effective at this point, and we're all just playing political theater because CNN told us to. Sadly, no outcry from your constituents will change that at this late juncture, I'm afraid. A 99.9% survival rate. That's the only number you need to know. We're being driven by irrational fear, not the will of the people. If you've forgotten why we're all here, to look out for the interests and civil rights of plain citizens against tyranny and consolidation of power, I would just implore you to please strongly consider retiring. Please do not run for city council again. Please take a long, hard time of self-reflection and soul searching before putting your name on the ballot, and then choose not to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Hart. I drove all the way here tonight from Wahoo, Nebraska. I've lived in Wahoo for several years, but I did spend 9 years in this beautiful city of Papillion. And as I drove in tonight, I realized, wow, it is beautiful. Nice job on your downtown. I do have a very big and very important vested interest in this great community. But with that said, I'm not here to argue the effectiveness of masks. I will and do support everyone that wears a mask. But what I will not support is a mayor, a city council, or any other body of government mandating that choice for us. Papillion has always been a strong, unified community where you lift each other up. You support each other and you support your police and your small businesses. If this ordinance passes, you'll bring division to this small town. It used to be a small town. It still feels like a small town to me, and hurt all your small businesses, because this type of mandate brings out the hate in people and mask shaming. I still do a lot of shopping in Wahoo, and I witnessed it firsthand the very next day after your mandate passed. But this is not about a mask, because this issue is about preserving our constitutional rights, even theirs, to ensure our health remains our individual responsibility and not the government's. Mandating people to wear a mask is a reflective reaction to the anxiety over the virus. I will leave you with one last question. Are you prepared? Are you prepared to be held accountable when you strip the civil liberties away from your citizens? Are you prepared to be held accountable when the quality of life and your economy declines here in Papillion? And are you prepared when your citizens encounter harassment like I did for not being able to wear a mask? I will leave you with one last quote from the Supreme Court justices. Even in a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put away and forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Marnie Hodgen. I live off of 144th and Maple. I'm here today because I believe in medical autonomy. I'm a mom. I have 3 young children whose rights for medical freedoms I'm fighting for. I'm here today for the other mama bears who can't be here tonight, and I'm here for the ones who cannot speak for fear of losing their jobs. And I'm here today to be the voice for the children whose parents still cannot see the forest from the trees, who keep turning a blind eye to the tyranny that is unfolding with these mandates we're being told are for our safety, that it's just 2 weeks, that it's just a mask. Pretty soon, the group mob think tank will be saying it's just a vaccine. And that kills me, guys. I do hope that people's eyes are opening up to the adverse effects we've been seeing and hearing about since mid-December. If there does come an unfortunate time of a vaccine mandate in the near future, you know we will all be here fighting against that too. We are not going anywhere. Tonight, I want to talk about and share the scientific findings from Dr. Marguerite Griesbrisson. She's a neurologist and neurophysiologist with a PhD in pharmacology. She has a special interest in neurotoxicology. Sorry, having a big problem with my big words. She has a special interest in neurotoxicology, environmental medicine, neuroregeneration, and neuroplasticity. This is what she has to say about masks and their effects on our brains, and I quote, "The rebreathing of our exhaled air will without a doubt create oxygen deficiency and a flooding of carbon dioxide. We know the human brain is very sensitive to oxygen deprivation. The acute warning symptoms are headaches, drowsiness, dizziness, decreased concentration, slowing down of the reaction time, all reactions of the cognitive system. However, when you have chronic oxygen deprivation, all of those symptoms disappear because you get used to it.
1 minute.
But your efficiency will remain impaired and the undersupply of oxygen in your brain continues to progress. We know that neurodegenerative diseases take years to decades to develop. So if today you forget your phone number, the breakdown in your brain would have started already 20 to 30 years ago. So while you're thinking that you become used to wearing your mask and rebreathing your own exhaled toxins, the degenerative processes in your brain are getting amplified as your oxygen deprivation continues. The second problem with chronic oxygen deprivation is that the nerve cells in your brain are unable to divide themselves with less oxygen. The lost nerve cells will no longer be regenerated. What is gone, end quote.
30 seconds.
Let that sink in for a moment. If this is what's happening in a developed brain of an adult, what are the ramifications for the children at school who are in masks for up to 8 hours a day for 5 days a week? This is what she said about a child's brain. A child's brain is incredibly active, thirsting for oxygen. The more metabolically active the organ is, the more oxygen it requires. In children and adolescents, every organ is metabolically active. So to deprive a child or an adolescent's brain of oxygen or to restrict it in any way is not only dangerous to their health, it is absolutely criminal. It is child abuse.
Thank you.
Oxygen deficiency inhibits the development of the brain, and the damage that has taken place cannot be reversed, end quote.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hey guys, Matt Perry, 803 North Beetle Street. So I think the mechanism is kind of the big thing that this ordinance is addressing on top of what was already dealt with during the last ordinance. You guys had said previously you were trying to avoid confusion. You're trying to avoid like this patchwork. It's already there, right? Like I've talked to the County Board of Commissioners, at least half of them, and they've all said like the county has zero intention and doesn't believe they have any ability to issue any kind of a mask-wide mandate. So that county issue alone leads to a patchwork situation, which I think even the mayor acknowledged during the Board of Health meeting. So again, it only causes confusion. I mean, how many SIDS do we have just right around us where all of a sudden those guys in the back have no authority to issue a citation for not wearing a mask? You cross the street and now all of a sudden they do have that authority. So if the goal was to remove confusion, I think you guys have only added to it. The other issue, I think, well, there's a couple other, but without you guys having to come together again to vote on a continuation of an ordinance or to reinstitute an ordinance, I think that also leads to confusion with people in the city. I think people don't know. I mean, the number of people I've talked to have said, wait, what website am I supposed to go to find out, whether or not the ordinance is in effect or isn't out of effect. So I just believe that if you guys are going to, again, reinstitute another mask mandate, you should, for a number of reasons. I think one is for accountability. I think people should be able to see you guys come up here and vote for it rather than just automatically taking effect or not taking effect. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Linda Collins. I'm from Valley, Nebraska, and I had no intentions of speaking at all tonight. But as I've watched this, and I've watched all the members of the council, and then I see these people here, is there one thing that you might notice? Is there one thing you might notice between this group and this group? The majority of you up here are all gray hairs. I can say that because this ain't real, honey. This comes out of a bottle because I'm 72 years old, okay? These are young people. They're fighting for their country the way you may not have fighted for your country unless you were in Vietnam, but I'm guessing some of your parents fought for this country. And I'm afraid that these kids back here, I'm sorry, I'm not being demeaning by calling you people kids. They're fighting for what our parents fought for. And if you can't see that, and if you think that they're just coming here because they don't like a mask, it's not the mask for most of them. Some of them, yeah, it probably is the mask because they've been told they have to do it. And typical of young people, I always say, and my friends that are here with me tonight know it. Don't tell Linda Collins that she can't do something. Because if you tell her she can't do something, she's going to do it.
1 minute.
That's just the way I am. And I am so proud of these young people that have the gumption to come from other towns to tell you how they feel. Yeah, I'm sure that they wish the people from Papillion, the young people from Papillion, because again, I see the young people that are here from Papillion, and I'm sure they wish that there were other ones here. I'm sure they wish that there was other small business owners who have been hurt so badly by this, that there was more to support them.
30
but
seconds.
Look, they've brought their children. They've brought their children, and they're just trying to get, we're going to lose our civil liberties, people. If you can't see that, they're going down and down and down.
Thank you.
Thank
Next.
you.
Anybody else?
My name is Lisa Osika. I'm from Blair, Nebraska. So in Blair a few weeks ago, they decided to not go with a mandate. And I guess I'd just like to not try to convince you that there should be masks or there shouldn't be masks, or that there's statistics here or statistics there. Everybody needs to just make their own decision on that, including you. But what if, I guess that's my question, what if, like in Blair, you let the people choose? There's a lot of people here today that are speaking on this topic. I've been watching downstairs. I haven't seen anyone for the other side, but maybe there are. But the majority of the people are speaking right now. And so what if you err on the side of liberty? What if? What if you let the people choose whether they would wear one or not? That's what they do in Blair. No one's saying you can't wear one. You decide, people, citizens, you decide. When you take that choice away from people, frankly, you turn them into cattle. You take away what makes a human being a human. That personhood given to us by our Creator. And when you take that away, when you take those choices away, you turn them into animals. Please don't do that. Look at Blair. They did it. They're okay. What if you just err with liberty? Let the people decide. What if you let the businesses of Papillion decide? Could the businesses of Papillion come up with some solutions, some things that would help people feel comfortable, whatever it is? I know, just like the people in Blair could have come up with and did come up with their solution, the people of Papillion could do it. The
1
small
minute.
businesses could do it. And Papillion, like Blair, could be a light. We in the state of Nebraska are in the middle of the country. and we're in the middle of the country for a reason. We can be a light. We can say, we hold up liberty more than anything else. So I ask you not to take that away from the people.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none in the chambers, there's nobody in the overflow room. Everybody's here, so we'll shift over to Zoom. Those that are logged on, if you put your name and address in the chat window for the record, and we'll use that as the cue. We do have a few. Mr. Barrett, Leprechaun Lane, are you on? Give a minute for people to unmute. Mr. Barrett.
Yes, I am on. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm James Barrett. I live at 1105 Leprechaun Lane. And I'd like to start tonight by saying and clearly stating that I believe in the encouragement of mask usage. I'm speaking here because I'm very concerned not only by this mandate, but the automatic nature of implementation. These concerns led me to email both of my council members, but I did not receive any reply. So I'm here to ask the council my questions and to encourage the council not only to rely on science, but logic as well. So here are my 4 questions. Why are there 2 different metrics for starting and stopping this mandate? Does any council member know the percentage of voluntary mask usage here in Papillion? And does any council member have scientific data on the impacts of the previous mask mandate on the spread of COVID here in the Papillion area? And then finally, what public notice will be given to the public to let us know when the mandate is in effect? I ask because there's a 7-day rolling average to enact the mandate, but the state website only displays a 14-day rolling average for data gathering. I'd like to yield any of my time to any council member that would like to address any of these questions.
Thank you. And we'll have council discussion at the 3rd reading. Thank you.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Are there any council members that would like to try and answer my questions? As I previously said, I emailed my representatives multiple times and did not receive a reply. I live in Ward 1.
Thank you. And we'll have council discussion at the 3rd reading.
Okay. Then in closing, I'd like to say that I'm not speaking out against mask usage or even advocating that a mask mandate is unconstitutional, because I've read the Constitution many times and I don't believe it's unconstitutional, any more unconstitutional than mandates to wear shoes and shirt to gain service. I just like a few answers to those questions, and if the council members could return my emails, I'd appreciate it. Or if anybody would like to speak to those items directly to me tonight during the time that I'm allotted, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Next was Mr. Martucci on Walnut Creek. Did note some items for the record, but did specifically say didn't want to necessarily speak again. And so we do have those comments in the chat window that we can incorporate. Mr. Gabriel, 90th and 370.
It's Miss Gabriel.
Oh, sorry about
problem.
that. Go ahead.
First, I just want to kind of make sure, I know Zoom is really hard, but I can actually have been watching. I can see the lack of eye contact and the yawning, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. Here, I would like to first say to Councilman Ingberg, I think it's important to focus on more than just the trigger issue on the ordinance. Every day we get new information about the virus and the efficiency of masks. So you should not implement a mandate based on the hospital numbers trigger, but rather each time with a public hearing. Speaking to that, the most recent studies do point to the negative effects of mask wearing, in addition to their inefficiencies and asymptomatic spread, which is the leading reason for wearing a mask. A couple of those real quick, your oral microbiome, as masks increase your mouth temperature and your dryness. The saliva, which is actually your protective barrier, dries out, right? And which is also part of your mucosal immune system. which prevents viruses from entering directly onto the surface of our body. Tooth decay, gum disease, all of these, you guys, this is all being published currently by dentists across the country. They're seeing an increase in all of these. Other effects of wearing a mask that should be noted. Well, this was by the American Medical Association, their journal. Face masks should not be worn by healthy individuals to protect themselves from acquiring respiratory infection, because there is actually no evidence to suggest that face masks worn by healthy individuals are effective in preventing people from becoming ill. They suggest that it should be only by people who are in medical fields or in close contact, right? So me walking by someone in high V for 15 seconds is actually not going to be spreading this virus. But my main point tonight, however, is the understanding of a constitutional law or regulation. It must have compelling interest, narrowly tailored, and least restrictive means possible. When I look at this ordinance and the situation we find ourselves in, I see something very interesting here. The ordinance is written on COVID in its entirety, right? The public nuisance it has created for the residents of Papillion.
1 minute.
However, anyone here can vouch that the majority of your citizens and your businesses are self-regulating as they see fit. You saw in December when there was no mandate, people were voluntarily wearing them, right? So your compelling interest is actually not that this virus is running rampant around your city, because your citizens are already handling that. You're saying that your compelling interest is that the minority of people who do not wear masks are your compelling interest, which I think is inappropriate. What percent do you think that is? If you think that the percent of people who don't want to wear masks is high, then it is compelling and also your job to represent those people who do not want to wear masks. If you think the percent of people who don't want to wear masks is low, then it is not compelling for you to implement a mandate, because your citizens are already handling the problem themselves. We saw that in the month of December. So I would ask that you guys, when you move forward, you should actually get numbers to create this transparency and public trust. Get the numbers of people who want a mandate. You keep saying you want to represent your constituents, but I would like to see those numbers that you are claiming to have. Thank you.
Thank you. There's nobody else in the Zoom queue that's got their name and address. There's nobody in a participant that's logged in just with a phone number. Kind of do a last call. Anybody else? All right, I will close the public hearing. Mr. Mumgarden.
I would make a motion to waive the third reading and take a vote on this ordinance tonight.
So if there is a motion, that does need a second, and then if there is a vote, that does require a supermajority, which is 6 of 8 in order to waive. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any council discussion on that? Mr. Gaines.
Well, I wanted to speak if the third reading is waived, but I'll go ahead and speak now. Regarding waiving the third hearing, you know, the one thing that I found compelling that I'd previously thought about prior to the meeting was that we did all get together approximately 6 weeks ago, and we did, you know, Councilman Stubbe offered an amendment. We agreed on this sunset provision, and we all voted on it. It was 7-1 in favor of this mask mandate. And now I think we are kind of moving the goalposts on this. If the third waiver passes, I'm going to ask that everybody carries over, you know, my comments from the last meeting over to this meeting, so I don't repeat myself. So at this point in time, I'm still in favor of a mask mandate, but I do agree with a couple of people that said that, you know, we got together and we had public hearings, we had council discussion, and we agreed upon what we wanted for the sunset provision. And there's no and right now the numbers, even if we pass this mask mandate tonight, it will not go into effect unless the numbers go back up. And so it's my logic that if we want to pass a new mask mandate and we see these numbers going up, there's no reason that the council can't get back together and have 3 days of consecutive meetings to pass a mask mandate if we feel like it's an emergency. So I'm not totally decided whether I'm going to vote to waive or not, but I can tell you that at this point in time, after some further comments, if the waiver of the third goes through, I'm probably going to vote against putting this into action, because I think we all agreed on it 6 weeks ago, and now we're coming back and moving the goalposts. So.
I don't know if anybody can hear me, but could I have a moment to speak? This is Mr.
no.
Barrett again.
No, there's council discussion now. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Sunday.
Mr. Mayor, I'm also going to vote against voting on this tonight. My understanding is, and I know I'm the newest member on this council, and maybe I'm just naive, but I've always been led to believe that we're only waive the second or third reading when we have something that's really pressing and has to be done now. And we don't have that here. We don't have that here. Our numbers are still going down, not up. There's not any imminent threat of this thing getting up over 20% anytime soon. And so let's just play it out the way it should play out. Why are we going to bend the rules for nothing? Just to show how powerful we are? Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing, Mr. Mumgard? Because you're the one that's proposing it. I totally disagree with that. This is a body that should respect its own rules unless there's a darn good reason not to. And this is not it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Mr. Mumgard.
I would just respond to that and remind everybody that this ordinance will not mandate mask wearing unless the hospital capacity measure changes. So if we pass this tonight, no, we will not have a mask mandate in effect tomorrow, next week, or any time that we can predict. So to sit here and say that we can wait, okay, that's fine to say that. But on the other hand, if we pass it tonight, we're in exactly the same position as if we wait for 2 weeks. So I guess I don't see the need to go forward in another 2 weeks. I mean, that's certainly the third reading is oftentimes an important thing to do because it gives us time to think about what we've heard at the public hearing and do additional research or, make up our mind one way or the other. But we've now had 3 public hearings over about 5 to 6 weeks. And so I'm not often in favor of waiving hearings, but I don't see, given that combination, that the mask mandate will not go into effect if we pass it tonight. And we've had 3 public hearings over 5+ weeks. I just don't see the need to continue on.
Stubbe.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in the same situation as Councilmember Gaines is relative to this particular ordinance. Obviously, I voted for the mandate. I proposed a sunset provision that I thought was based off of a health metric, because that's part of the reason why that I supported the mandate to begin with from the standpoint of health. And so I believe as council members that if we're going to mandate something, that it should be done at the city council and not have a provision relative to automatically putting it back into effect again. So irregardless of whether we waive the third reading or not, my intent is to vote against this particular ordinance tonight.
Thank you. Any other council discussion on the waiver? Mr. Ingberg.
Well, I'll agree with Mr. Mumgard. We've had 3 nights of hearings, 8+ hours counting tonight. The information really hasn't changed. I'll disagree with my colleague, unfortunately, Mr. Gaines, in the fact that I don't think we moved the goalpost at all. The intent of the ordinance remains the same. So has the activation point, which is equal to or more than 20% hospital occupancy. The only thing that has changed, and it's not moving the goalpost 1 inch, is it will automatically go into effect should we reach that number again. So in effect, we're not changing really anything other than that mechanism to make it simpler, to make it clearer. I don't see any purpose coming back and have a third meeting. It's not a hearing, a third meeting for council discussion, because I think we need to make clear to anybody out there that when we go to the council discussion, public hearings is over now. So we can't take testimony at that point anyway. So it's going to be us discussing it once again. And I'm having some struggles understanding what difference there's going to be in discussion when everything remains the same. It's just the mechanism that's changed.
Thank you, Mr. Sunday.
I would like to think that my colleagues would respect the many good points out here that have been made tonight and maybe want to go home and reflect and consider some of those arguments that were made before we cast such an important vote. I don't think that's asking a whole lot, and it would be in compliance with our own rules. So why don't we just follow our own rules? Because neither Councilman Ingberg or Councilman Mumgard have offered any sort of support other than they're sick of this, which is not a good reason. If you're sick of your job, then maybe you shouldn't be here. But this is your job. So let's follow the rules unless we really have an emergency that requires us to get this done tonight. But I don't think we do. So let's follow the rules. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilman Mumgard, a second by Councilman Jaworski. Any other council?
May I speak?
I'm sorry, by Mr. Ingberg. Go ahead.
You know, we've always had a rule here too, Councilman Sunday, that we're able to disagree without being disagreeable. Don't put words in my mouth. Don't accuse me of being sick of anything when I've invested 29 years of my life in this job and worked very hard at it. So if you want to criticize my opinion, that's great, but don't ever question my enthusiasm for being on the council and my hard work on it. Thank you.
Any other council discussion? You will stay on topic. We have a motion and a second. This requires a supermajority. Please vote. The yes vote would be to waive, and a no vote would be not to waive. So then we'll handle it at the next council meeting. So a yes vote would waive and we'd handle it tonight. No would be at the next meeting.
Sunday? No. Mumgard? Yes. Gaines?
No.
Nope, sorry. Gaines?
No.
Glover? Yes. Jaworski? Yes. Klug? Yes. Stube? Yes. Ingberg?
Yes.
6 yeas, 2 nays by Sunday and Gaines.
So 6-2, so that is supermajority, so motion passes. So then with that, we're on to third reading. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1913? And again, the way it's currently written, it's got an emergency clause. So to pass with an emergency clause, that vote also is a supermajority vote. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Councilman Mumgard, second by Councilman Jaworski. Any other council discussion on the motion, on the ordinance itself? Mr. Sunday.
I think one of the citizens that spoke, I believe it was Mr. Hall, it might have been one other one as well. I think correctly pointed out that there's an inconsistency in this ordinance, the way it's written. Did you write this, Councilman Jaworski? Because you proposed it. So, but what I'm referring to is the automatic shut off when we go below 20% on a 14-day moving average, but the automatic turn on when it goes above 20% on a 7-day moving average. And as Mr. Hall rightly pointed out, although I'm not a great mathematician, I do know that it's true that you could have both happening at the same time. So then what would happen?
Mr. Jaworski.
What I asked for when I've seen this was when expired and wasn't coming back up. The way I interpreted this when we passed this 6 weeks ago was we're going to follow the sunset rule. And the sunset rule is we're following what Governor Ricketts puts out. So Governor Ricketts is the one that come up with the 7-day, the 14-day. And that's the only thing I said. I said, if we're going to follow the sunset rule, we need to follow the sunset rule. And when it goes down, it goes off. And when it goes up, it goes back on. And hopefully, the way everything's going, it's never going to go back on the way I see it. But if not, if it does go back on, this keeps us from coming back having 3 meetings again. So that's what I asked for.
And if there is a desire to change that 7 to a 14 for consistency, that obviously could be a motion to amend. Mr. Sunday.
I'm confused. I thought Governor Ricketts was the one that has declined over and over and over to impose any kind of executive order for mask mandates statewide the way he's been asked to. So from my perspective, he's against mask mandates, but wants it to be up to the local communities. As to this mask mandate, the way it applies to our community, clearly it's driving a huge wedge amongst our citizenry. That's clear. And even maybe on this council. You heard some feathers ruffled tonight, and maybe I was a little too harsh, but maybe I think it's important to defend people's freedoms and not just suspend the rules for no good reason. But we're hearing from people that they're going out to stores and they're shopping and they have a medical reason why they can't have a mask, and they're being attacked, not physically attacked, but they're being verbally attacked and reported on merely for shopping, merely for trying to go out and provide what their families need out in the community where they live, where their families live. And we're dividing one citizen versus another. We're creating mask snitches. And we don't really have any medical reason that we can point to, any study that shows that these mask mandates are doing anything beneficial. I'm not trying to toot your horn all night, Mr. Hall, but he pointed out another study that I found very interesting, North Dakota versus South Dakota. North Dakota had a mask mandate. South Dakota did not. South Dakota also had the Sturgis rally, which you would think would really drive their numbers up. And yet the graphs are right along with each other. There's no difference. Or there's no appreciable difference. So clearly voluntary mask wearing works just as well if masks work. I don't even accept that premise necessarily, because I personally got COVID and was wearing a mask. And I know lots of people that got COVID and have worn masks all along. So I really doubt their value, but just for argument's sake, if the masks work, I think the voluntary mask wearing in communities like Bellevue, like Blair, like Wahoo, are just as effective as a mandate. And they're not nearly as insulting to the citizens. They're not nearly as divisive to the community. And it fosters a spirit of cooperation and community instead of bitterness and divisiveness. And that's what we're doing. And that's why I said a few weeks ago, this doesn't feel like the small town that we try to espouse to outsiders. And I want it to. I love Papillion. My ancestors have been in this area since 1856 on the Trumbull side. And my grandfather, Sunday, came and started the Papillion Theater back in the 1950s. So this community is dear to me. And I want this community to remain, no matter how big we get, I want this community to remain a close-knit, small-town feel. And this just destroys that. And I know a lot of you anyway, look at me as the outsider because I'm the new boy on the block. But I would ask you to really consider that, because I think that's an important point to consider. Do you want that for your community? Do you really? I would urge all of you to respect our citizens and respect their voluntary efforts. And let's heal these wounds and move forward together as a community and end this nonsense and end all these hard feelings. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mumgard. Please, no clapping, no comments, keep the decorum. Mr. Mumgarden.
Councilman Stubbe, your comments somewhat confuse me because we've had these conversations and I am trying to put everything together. So I'll put this out and you're welcome to respond in any way. You indicated that when you proposed this using the governor's measure, hospital capacity measure, it was so that we would have a sunset. Well, okay, and I agreed with you because the governor's measure, as I understood what the governor was trying to do when he created that, was to create some sort of a measure of the prevalence of the virus in Nebraska and its impact on the medical communities. And so that I saw that as a measure of need. Is it prevalent? Is it hurting the hospitals or stressing the hospitals? And if so, we need to do things that we don't need to do at other times. And so when you proposed that measure, I thought, okay, fine. And sure, it sunset when the need disappeared. Well, I guess I look at it and I think, well, that's all we're doing with this is putting that sunset back in there. I mean, it'll be sunsetted tomorrow, just like was yesterday. We're putting that back in there, but we're also have a sunrise so that whether we are imposing on the citizens with a mandate or not, is tied to the perceived need as measured by the governor's hospital capacity measure. Now, I see that's an inexact measure and it's reactive rather than preventative. So there's pluses and minuses with it. So I sit there and I think, well, it's kind of odd that we're being criticized for focusing on only imposing mandates when there is the need, because that's all I see that this is doing, rather than just picking a date and say, okay, that's February 23rd is a great date. As far as, should we pass the mandate? Should we have a mandate or not? Well, I guess I see my job as different than maybe some other council members do. And that I try to do my job picking what I think is best for the community. I long ago decided that's not necessarily responding to pressure by people screaming at me. If that's the measure, you're right, Mr. Sunday. We should just eliminate the division and make the dissenters happy. If I can't get convinced that they are right, well, so what? It's my job to just do what they're demanding. That is not my job. My job is to do what I think is best for the community. And at the moment, I think that if there is a need to protect people from infection, then we should try to do it. And that's why I'm supporting this mandate.
Mr. Jaworski.
Yeah, I want to touch base on this too a little bit because we did hear from a lot of people that are against it. I get that, but a lot of them are from Omaha, from Blair, from Valley. How many are really from Papillion here? Well, then how come everybody come up and said Valley, Blair, all that stuff? But here's the thing. What you guys got to understand too is we get emails from people that are supporting this. So if you look at, we got both sides to deal with here. We got you guys we got to listen to, and we got to listen to the people that send us emails. So
Please, no comments from the audience. No comments from the audience.
So this isn't, and the thing about it is, this mask mandate may never go back into effect. The way the hospitals are going down, they're continuing to go down. Let's hope they continue to go down. For the people that volunteer to wear their masks, like me, I'm going to continue to volunteer to wear my mask because I think that's the right thing to do. I think I'm going to protect you guys in case I do have COVID. You guys can sit there and shake your heads all you want. I really don't care. The thing is, if you care about people, if you care about your neighbors, then the right things to do is to try and help each other. It's not to sit here and ridicule people. it's frustrating because there's two sides we have to look at. We listen to you guys, the people that send us emails that trust us for what we do. That's why they're not here. They trust us to make a good decision. And the sad thing about this is this mask mandate may not even go into effect. That's the sad thing about the whole thing. But it's going to be nice if we get it to pass to where if it does, it does. We don't have to come back and have 3 meetings again. That's kind of what this is about. But the way it's going, the vaccines are almost here. And that's another thing. How many of you guys are going to get vaccinated? Then this problem's never going to go away. It'll always be here.
Please.
So that's what I'm saying, and I'm done.
Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you. So I'm going to address my colleagues' questions to me with regard to this. So
Please, no comments from the audience.
yeah, if I could speak.
It's council
please.
discussion.
If I could speak, please. Thank you. Obviously, doing a mandate for me was a difficult decision to begin with. And I had very much concerns with regard to an arbitrary date that was established by other communities that I saw didn't have any relevance with regard to kind of the health impacts with regard to that date. So I looked at what the governor was using to place restrictions in place relative to all the different types of, whether it's church services or extracurricular activities or bars or whatever it might be. But because of the fact that this thing is changing all the time, I think it's imperative that the council take into account, if this is a mandate, something that we do in the future, that we take into account information at the time that we give consideration to it. So I understand the reasoning for looking at the governor's metric as far as putting it back in place, but I think that takes away from us being able to evaluate what has changed over that period of time where, because again, we're going down. At the time that I voted for the mandate, we were going up. It was an impact to the health professionals. As an individual that's in a highly compromised age group, if I got sick, I wanted to be able to go to the hospital and get care. And so I was concerned about the impact to the health community. It's going down. We have a vaccine, multiple ones that are in place, that potentially are being given today and will be given over the next few months. And if the impact to the health community continues to go back up, then I think, yes, we should look at it again. But it's a difficult decision for me to make with regard to the mandate. And I think it should be, if we're going to consider to do it again, it should be done in front of the council and not necessarily based on, again, a metric that, even though it's the governor's metric, he could change that metric tomorrow if he wants to, based on his experts that he's using to come up with that particular rationale.
Any other council discussion? Mr. Sunday.
I'd just like to respond to Councilman Jaworski's comments, suggesting, I guess that is what the pure definition of virtue signaling, letting everybody know what a better, more caring person you are than your political opponent because of the way you view a certain issue, is the ultimate form of disrespect in my view. Getting back to what Mr. Ingberg said earlier, we do not need to cast dispersions on others here on the council that they don't care about other human beings just because we don't agree on this point. I think the arguments I've made, whether you agree with them or not, I don't think you can disagree that there's logic behind them. And they're not based upon this audience out here. I happen to agree with a lot of what they say, but I don't feel the way I feel because that audience is there. I came in with my views before this audience even showed up. So, you can say that I'm playing to the audience and that I don't care about people, but you'd be wrong, Councilman Jaworski. Thank you.
Any other council discussion?
Yes, Mayor, this is Councilman Gaines.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Gaines.
Okay, so I'm gonna start by saying the last time that we had council discussion on this mask mandate, I spoke for approximately 5 minutes. So I'm not gonna reiterate all those points, but that is still how I feel today. But moving forward, I want to go back to number one. I agree with Councilmember Stube is that when we voted on this issue last time, the numbers were going up. The information that we had said they were going to continue to go up after Thanksgiving. They were going to continue to go up after Christmas. And we're still not far enough past Christmas or New Year's that we know if they're going to go back up but I do feel like it's responsible to vote on real-time information. My main point here today is just that we got together, and this is only the way that I feel. So anybody else that feels differently, I still have the same respect for you that I did, last year or the year before, or 8 years ago, which was my first on, council. And that's one of the nice things about this council is that we can disagree and then we come back and handle the next issue. We're respectful to each other, so on and so forth. But my point, my personal feeling is that I came to a place where I was comfortable. We got to that sunset place, the ordinance went away. And, if we find ourselves in 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or hopefully never, back in that position where we have to reevaluate if we need to put this mandate back in place, that's the position, that's where I'm ready to do it. So like I previously stated, I'm going to vote against this tonight because I simply can't vote for something 6 weeks ago. And then because it's sunset and I didn't, get the way that I feel, then I'm going to go back and change my rules and vote a different way or change the ordinance so that it stays in effect or goes into effect. Something I heard was, when we need it. And I think that, and maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I hope that it's if we ever need it. If we need this mask mandate again, and we find ourselves in the same position that we were 6 weeks ago, I'll be in full support of it, presumably, unless there's some different data out there that suggests otherwise. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I know that there's other council members that have mentioned it to me, and I'm not afraid to admit this, but I am one of the first council members that came forward and pushed, for exploring a mask mandate. And, as we listen to testimony tonight, I didn't hear a bunch of medical doctors and epidemiologists and, other people that are specialists in their field come out and give me any convincing evidence that masks don't work or that masks make things worse or anything. So my opinion truly hasn't changed. I'm basically just voting on the fact that I came to an agreement 6 weeks ago or so, and that's something I was comfortable with. Like Councilman Stube said, the numbers are coming down. I don't know, I definitely didn't believe that we needed to skip the third reading. I respect people that, made the motion, and I respect the people that voted for it. But one final thing I want to say is it's semi-unrelated to this mask mandate is that I really want the people that testified tonight to go back and listen to my 5 minutes that I spoke at the last meeting. And at no point in time was I ever disrespectful to any of those people. I was never disrespectful to their views. I was never disrespectful to any of my constituents or any people that had a opposing view. And tonight, what I heard was a lot of things that I think are below our citizens, a lot of disrespectful behavior, a lot of digs on council members. And maybe those weren't directed at me, maybe they were, but these other 7 members of the city council they're my peers and we work together. And I felt disrespected just by them being disrespected. So if this comes back up again, I would ask anybody who testifies, say what you want, but do it in a respectful manner, the same way that, I gave my, speech the last time. And that's all I have to say tonight.
Ms. Klug.
I would like to say that I was comfortable with the last vote based off of where the percentage is for the beds. My hope was we would see it sunset once and we would absolutely never have another concern. I can't guarantee that. Hopefully the numbers are coming down, as many of my other council members have said, but there is no guarantee to it. So when I vote tonight, I am going to vote to support this. I am supporting this based off of, I want to follow what the bed usage is. Doesn't matter if we sunset once or twice or 3 times. It's an attempt to try to show respect for our neighbors and to do the right thing. And so to me, I am fixing a mistake that I made last time in letting it sunset with never providing an opportunity for it to have a sunrise.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? If not, please vote. And again, because of the emergency clause, this does require a supermajority to pass. Please vote.
Sunday. Mumgarde. Gaines.
No.
Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stube. Ingberg.
Yes.
5 yeas, 3 nays.
5-3, not a supermajority. Motion fails. Next is committee reports. I don't think any committees have met, but we do have new committee assignments for this next year. So those are on your counter. Mr. Mumgarde, did you have something?
Yeah, procedurally. Is it appropriate or permitted for me to now, since that version of the ordinance did not pass, is it permitted for me to offer an amendment of that ordinance and remove the emergency clause? And then we move forward and voting on whether we want this without the emergency clause.
I'll look to Mr. Thielen, but I believe no amendment could be made because the motion failed. I think the only way, if your intent is procedurally still to do something, I think the only thing to do would be a motion to reconsider, which would put the motion back on the table. And since it's back on the table, now you could do an amendment and vote again. But I'll look to Mr. Thielen for procedural advice.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to go to that, in that direction, I think a motion for reconsideration would be what you would want to do and have it reconsidered along with a motion to amend in whatever manner that you want to do.
Okay, well, fine, but then which side is the prevailing side that
Well,
can make that motion?
I'll look to Mr. Thielen, but again, I think the prevailing side is it would be the one side that lost. No,
Oh.
no, the prevailing side would be the side that won. It's the prevailing side. We've done these rarely, so I'm going off of my knowledge and looking to Mr. Thielen. The prevailing side is the one that can do a motion to reconsider. The prevailing side was the 3 members that I believe, which were the 3 members that did not create the supermajority. So I think it would be the right of one of those 3 to bring the motion to reconsider back. If one of those 3 bring the motion, then I believe anybody can second it. I don't think it has to be one of the 3. I think the second could be anybody. That's not a debatable motion from my understanding. So we'd go straight to, not council discussion, we go straight to a vote. But I'll look to Mr. Thielen.
Our code says motions to reconsider may only be made by a council member who voted with the majority or prevailing position on the subject to be reconsidered, who was absent. In this case, the prevailing position was the minority of 3 votes that kept the supermajority from being passed.
Okay, now, again, what is our timeline for making that motion to reconsider? I know you can make it tonight. That's why I bring it up. I just want to make sure everybody understands where we can and can't go.
It can be made tonight, and there's also a time limit. I'll look to Mr. Thielen for that one.
A motion to reconsider may be made at the same or a subsequent regular council meeting.
Okay, if subsequent, I'm sorry, my recollection of the reconsideration ordinance isn't as good as it should be. If the motion is made at a subsequent meeting, does it change the number of votes you have to have?
As far as the motion to reconsider or the vote on the original motion?
To bring the motion back. Yeah, the motion to
Whether it's
reconsider.
tonight or the subsequent meeting, according to Mr. Thielen.
And we're used to
It's the
having-
motion by one of the 3, a second by anybody, and it's a simple majority, I believe.
It says a motion for reconsideration made at any meeting shall require the favorable vote of a majority of the members elected to the city
Okay.
council to pass.
So it'd be a simple majority to get then that would put the motion back on the floor. At that point, we're dealing with the original motion. And then since it's on the floor, then amendments can be made.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, so just to kind of continue this conversation, I have no intent to make a motion to reconsider. I don't know if my council member Sunday would make a motion to reconsider or council member Gaines, but just a point of discussion. I'm assuming your intent would be is to remove the emergency clause. Is that what your intent would be?
Yes, and if we remove the emergency clause, then it can go into effect. I mean, then we can vote on it, and it can be passed by a majority of the council, just like it was the first time. Well, no, that's incorrect. Just like all of the other ordinances that we pass, some of which have some very significant impact, that I bring that up simply to lay that out as an option for you and 2 other council members, that if we reconsidered and removed the emergency clause, this could be adopted in the same fashion as all, 99.9% of all the ordinances that we adopt. That's all.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that? Thank you. No committees have met. We've got new committee assignments out. Just a reminder a little bit for education. We reorganize committees once a year. A committee is 4 council members, so it's not a majority, but it does get a diversity of opinions when we're working on items before they come to the council. I try to make sure committees are represented by every single ward, and that did occur this time. Every committee has every ward represented. I try to balance if somebody has a mixture of, I don't carry the entire committee over from one year to the next. I try to keep a couple of people on so we keep some of the historical knowledge of what happened the last year and what decisions were, but bring a couple of new people on then for some new perspectives and new insight. And we accomplish that on every one of the committees as well. And then if a council member has a specific interest in an area, try to honor those. And that was done this time. A couple had those. And then, so we have the 4 standing committees, and then we have a 5th committee, which is the audit ad hoc committee. And I do the same thing on that one. 2 people who were on it before, but 2 new ones for a different perspective. So there's 4 council members that have 3 assignments, 4 council members that have 2. And so you have those letters. Appreciate the work you do on those. And if you have any questions on your committee and maybe why it was there, let me know. Any other council comments? Not seeing any. Just a couple of things from the last couple of weeks. It's fairly quiet just because of the holidays. A reminder that the Public Works Committee does have a meeting January 19th at 5:30. Next city council meeting will be at the landing because remodeling will start here. The annual report did get sent out to all residents over Christmas. And Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, just brought up, reminded me with regard to the legislature's now gone into session. So I guess one of the questions, Mayor, would be with regard to legislation potentially that we as the city of Papillion or we as a group of the United Sarpy cities would propose. Can you talk a little bit about, what the steps are moving forward, and if there's a legislation that we have on the radar right now that we're proposing on including?
Yeah, Papillion itself, I don't think introduced any specific legislation. Bellevue had a couple of areas of interest, and one was kind of a cleanup regarding some annexation. A property that's in a flood zone, should it be fully valued or should it have like maybe a greenbelt type status because it's not fully developed? And so they did propose, we've all looked at that, and the United Cities did take a stand that nobody has any issues with it. So we're supporting Bellevue on that. And they had one other one that they're proposing. No other cities brought any up to the United Cities. So from our work with the legislature, we're basically following it 2 ways. One, we are a member of the Nebraska League of Municipalities, which most of the cities and villages in Nebraska are, and they very actively work with the legislature. That's their primary thing. And I did get appointed to the executive board, so I just started that. So we'll have some insight into what the league is doing. And they've got a committee structure to get input of what's going on, specific areas and sizes of communities. And so we'll be monitoring that of any areas of interest. And then, of course, the United Cities, we monitor independently all of the bills of the legislature for any items of interest. And so as that develops, I think the legislature has 10 or 14 days to introduce bills. And so that's where we'll actively be watching what's being introduced. Does it have an impact to us? And then kind of formulate a position and see if we want to go testify on it. So we'll keep you updated on that. And if there's any specific bills that are introduced and you have an opinion on if we should actively support that or oppose it or help mold it, let us know. Every day when bills are introduced, those are on the website down there, so you can watch those as well.
Yeah, so I guess I'm making the assumption that the turn back with regard to water and wastewater that's been proposed in the past is something that will come up again. And I'm assuming that the cities will support that, which I believe the league is also supporting that.
That's been the historical position. Yeah. Any other questions on that? So again, things move really fast when they're in session. Sometimes they'll have a hearing, they're making decisions. They want to know what's going on that day. And we've got some of that communication set up with the United Cities through the administrators. But as bills get introduced, if there's ones you're watching, you're concerned about, you want us to support, raise that awareness. Any other council comments? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Sunday. Please vote.
Sunday. Mumgarde. Gaines.
Yes.
Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stube. Ingberg.
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.